All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out. My name is Michael Pooley. I'm a lieutenant with the Tempe Police Department. I just want to introduce our speakers today. It's going to be Police Chief Tom Ryff, the Tempe Police Department, Mr. Mark Bernovich from the Attorney General's Office, and Special Agent Doug Coleman from the Drug Administration, Enforcement Administration, as well as Commander Kim Hale with the Tempe Police Department. Today we're going to be talking about a 30-month investigation that took place with all three agencies. Having personally worked with many of our detectives as well as some of the agents and the prosecuting attorney, I know this is the finest team that there is of drug investigators, and we're going to hear from these men about this case. And with that, we'll turn it over to Chief Tom Ryff.
Good morning. I'll leave the commander and DEA talk about the specifics of this case. As you know from some of the material you've looked at already, it started in 2012, and we were going after some drug trafficking coming in from Mexico, some major drug cartels bringing drugs into our community. This press conference here today, just on its face, is probably not very dissimilar to other conferences we've had within the Phoenix region, but some things that I want you to think about. Number one, take a look at the breadth and the scope of this. 77 criminal indictments, 485 pounds of methamphetamine at a street value of $1.7 million, 50 kilos of powdered cocaine, street value $1.3 million, 4.5 pounds of heroin, street value well over $100,000. And think about this one, $7.1 million in cash. I want you to think about that for a second, then I want to digress back to January of this last year. The Arizona State University, as you may recall as broadcasters and journalists, had a 30-minute presentation, and it was titled, "Hooked, Tracking Heroin Has a Hold on Arizona." And if you remember, the Arizona Broadcasting Association and other members of the media devoted 30 minutes of uninterrupted time in cooperation with Arizona State University, who did just a fabulous job at the Cronkite School, to make sure that members of Arizona, our great community, recognized what's happening here in our community with respect to heroin and the impact that it's having on our community. Arizona State University, I applaud them under the leadership of Dr. Crow and the Cronkite School. They devoted 8 full-time staff members, 70 students for an entire semester. These students went out and they evaluated the impact of drugs on our state. They took a look at more than 10 million emergency room records and more than 2,000 heroin overdose cases. The CEO of Arizona Broadcast Association, Art Brooks, made a comment, and I think this is important. The heroin and opiate addiction is killing hundreds of Arizonans. It's a growing epidemic. Why do I lay this foundation out to you? I lay it out to you because I want you to understand that what we're dealing with here is not only an epidemic with drugs, but there's money in it. The cartels are after money. As journalists, take a look at what we have here. What's missing from these photographs? Anybody recognize what's missing? What's missing is marijuana. What you see here is cocaine, methamphetamine, and heroin. Why is that happening? And why is it that the Arizona State University, in association with the Arizona Broadcast, put out a 30-minute expose on the epidemic of opiates and heroin? It's because the drug cartel is no longer interested in marijuana. What's happening in our community? We have 4 states in the United States that have now legalized recreational marijuana. 6 more that are currently looking at doing that as well. I went online and I was evaluating the impact that legalizing marijuana is having here just locally. Colorado finished their first year with recreational marijuana, and it's been reported that they realized somewhere in the area of $700 million in revenues, 3.5 million of that as a result of recreational marijuana sales. Here in Arizona alone, you can go to a strip mall and purchase marijuana. My point being is drug cartels are sophisticated. It's a criminal enterprise. It's a criminal syndicate. And if the money is not there, they're going to change their tactics. They're going to plow the fields of marijuana, and they're going to replant opium, poppy plants, because that's the market. And when you bring that market to our great community and you introduce it to our streets and you introduce it to our families and our children, it's the perfect recipe for what Arizona State University and the Cronkite School found, and that it's a heroin, it's an opium epidemic. It's not done, it's just beginning. The war on drugs is a war that all of us have to fight. It's not just a law enforcement issue. It's a community issue, it's a society issue, it's parents, teachers, it's us in law enforcement, it's you in your role as leaders. It's everybody's responsibility. DEA, local law enforcement, our prosecutors, we're all in this together. But the fact of the matter is, folks, that you see some fantastic work here. The purpose of this press conference is not to boast, it's not to brag, it's not to say what a great job we did, although I strongly believe that we have made an impact on street-level drugs. I think that we have saved a lot of lives in our great community, but I want to underscore the fact that we've got a problem. It's an epidemic. It's a huge problem, and we have to stay one step ahead of the drug cartels in order to keep our communities safe. And that's the point I wanted to make. With that, I'm going to turn it over back to Lieutenant Pulley, but I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to thank all the journalists in your respective stations for your support and recognizing that this is truly an epidemic and shining a light on the problem with the drug cartels and how the opiates are having an impact on our community and our children. Thank you.
One thing I forgot to add, if you could just hold your questions till the end. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Mark Brnovich from the Attorney General's office, and after him will be Agent Doug Coleman from the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you all once for being here, and I just want to make sure that I begin by thanking Chief Ryff for your eloquent and informative comments. Frankly, it's really hard to follow up because I think he touched on such key points, so my remarks will be brief. I also want to thank Special Agent in Charge Coleman for all the work that the DEA is doing. And so I'm here as the Attorney General for a couple of reasons. One is this is a vitally important issue to us in our communities. We want to make sure the message is out there that our office is going to work with federal, state, and local law enforcement to aggressively pursue the cartels that are undermining our quality of life by polluting our neighborhoods, by smuggling drugs and using weapons and perpetuating violence in our communities. It's something we can't accept, and we will work hard every single day, and our prosecutors are going to work hard every single day to make sure that those crimes are investigated and prosecuted. And we want to make sure that we have a collaborative relationship with local, federal, and county law enforcement officials. The other thing I want to just note that unlike, and many of you, or that if you've covered the way a typical criminal investigation works, normally you have a law enforcement agency that investigates a case, and they bring it to the prosecutors, and the prosecutors make a charging decision about what charges they'll move forward on and how that case will proceed through the justice system. This case was a little unique and different, not only because of the reasons that Chief Ryff explained, that the length of the investigation and the types of drugs and weapons that we were seeing, but also because this was a case that was investigated where our office was involved from the very beginning. We had worked with both the federal and the state officials, local officials, our drug and racketeering section, to make sure that we were involved in all levels, including strategizing on how the investigation would go forward, who those targets of the investigation would be, and then working with the law enforcement officials to make sure that the proper charges were brought. And as you may know, that some of the folks involved in this case have already been sentenced to prison to various terms. And so there are some cases still pending. And so it's difficult or hard as a prosecutor to get into some specifics, but let me just assure you once again that our office is going to work very, very hard with the local, federal, state officials to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our communities safe by going after the cartels that are smuggling drugs and using weapons to perpetuate violence in our neighborhoods. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Doug Coleman. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration in Arizona. First off, I want to thank Chief Ryff, and the Attorney General for inviting me to the press conference. I want to talk a little bit about DEA's role in this particular investigation and what DEA does here in Arizona. Our agents work very closely with the Tempe Police Department officers on this particular case to expand this investigation beyond just the city limits of Tempe or beyond the greater Phoenix area. DEA utilizes an organizational attack strategy to attack all facets of drug trafficking organizations. In this particular case, we were able to start with lower-level dealers and the expertise of the Tempe Police Department and their narcotics detectives and expand this case over the last 2.5 years into an international conspiracy case. Okay, at this time, besides the operations that are occurring in Tempe, and Commander Hale will get into much more detail on this, but besides the operations that are happening in Tempe, there are multiple investigations going on around the country related to this, as well as continued investigations going on cartel leadership down in Mexico. Okay, make no mistake, this organization is not a local organization. It is an international drug trafficking organization, and the efforts of the men and women on this particular case were outstanding in developing these type of investigations. Only when we take out the entire snake, from the head to the rattle, do we have a significant impact on these operations. Different drug trafficking organizations will always replace the members that we take out. The thing I found unique about this particular case is these agents, these detectives, always left some way to get back in to the new cell that was regenerating each time we took out another cell. That's exceptional investigative expertise, exceptional prosecutorial expertise, and the results of this investigation made a significant impact on this community and will have impact across the country. So I thank everybody for their commitment to continue to work with DEA. I thank my partners here at the AG's office and Tempe Police Department. This particular task force is a long-standing task force. We have a long and very productive, at least in my opinion, very productive relationship with the Tempe Police Department and their officers. We've worked together for years, and it's a fine department, and they are an exceptional group of investigators and law enforcement officers. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike to introduce the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final speaker is going to be Commander Kim Hale. He is in charge of our entire criminal investigations to include this part of this task force.
Hello, everybody. Operation Terminus is the operation that is a name that they've given this particular case. And it goes back to starting about July 2012. In this case, they were started from an individual who they actually picked up on a case prior to that. And his name was Jesus Sekisaka, and you can see him on the board there. And so starting from this one individual, you can see what you can, start working your way out and branching out into the communities and into other states to figure out exactly how far-reaching these organizations can be. They've, this case, although started here, they went to LA, they went to Minnesota, Indianapolis, all over the U.S., Las Vegas, and to try to track down the dope, the guns, the money, the people, and bring them to justice. So some of the things that we have out here on the table, you can see, are some of the implements that they used. Some of the, like this here, the brown bag represents some of the, maybe the size of what a kilo would look like, 2.2 pounds of methamphetamine. The scale in front of it is a representation of just 1/10 of a gram of methamphetamines, what it would take to give somebody a usable dose to basically alter their state for 7 to 9 hours. And so, these are the kinds of things, when you take 485 pounds of methamphetamine and you break it down to 1/10 of a gram, you can see how far that will stretch into the community and how much of an impact this kind of case can make in a community to help take and make people safe. So this particular case, a lot of people talk about, drugs are an individual's choice, or it doesn't hurt anybody else. Why do we prosecute drugs? But if you personalize this a little bit, and I think we need to personalize this and realize that when people get hooked on drugs, they will do just about anything to get their next fix. That's breaking into your home. That's doing a robbery, whatever it takes. And that's the kind of crimes that this operation helps to alleviate from the communities, and from not only Tempe, but from many communities because of the size and scope of the case. I guess I'm going to take questions because I'm not sure exactly what kind of questions you all might have.
You said it started with one guy. what happened and then, how it started?
Well, I don't want to get into too much into investigative strategy, but that one guy was picked up from actually another criminal investigation. And when they start working one particular individual, of course, he needs to move his product and he'll sell to 4 or 5 other people. And then those people will want to sell to 4 or 5 other people. And pretty soon, when you take, if they're getting 10 to 20 pounds of meth a week, typically these folks are receiving about 10 to 20 pounds of meth on average per week. In addition to 4 kilos of cocaine, one of them, Judith Orozco, she was getting about 4 kilos of coke plus 10 to 20 pounds of meth. A lot of these are polydrug organizations that are operating here in Phoenix, being supplied out of Mexico. And so they provide the distribution network for the cartels out of Mexico. So as we work on dismantling these Phoenix-based organizations that are shipping all across the nation and into our own communities, they start branching out and finding other people that are dealing the drugs. So I say it started with, Jesus Sekisaka, but it quickly branches out because they've got to distribute their drugs because this is a business. They want to make money. And so we chase down the people that are making the money.
Can you say how many individuals have been sentenced so far? I think you're trying to.
There was 77 indictments thus far, but it still changes by the week.
And you said some are still pending. Will you expect further arrests or?
There's going to be more arrests. They're still coming. Like I said, it changes weekly as far as how many people continue to get picked up. The case, just like when July 2012, we picked up one individual from a prior case. We're not done investigating. We're not done making arrests. We're not done doing seizures. There's a lot of work to be done. And I think Chief Ryff laid out the foundation of how much work is out there.
With the apprehension of the leader of Las Zetas in Mexico and Latika, are you expecting an increase in this kind of activity here in the valley?
I don't think that by apprehending one cartel head in Mexico is going to have an impact with us here because he's going to be replaced by somebody tomorrow. And, that organization, whether it's the Zetas or the Sinaloan cartel or, whichever cartel you choose, the Gulf cartel, they're going to continue to try to operate and make money until the cartel is dismantled. Well, that's what, the DEA does, and that's their side of the investigation. So we've been able to work with the DEA, and they've been tremendous partners in helping us to branch out. We couldn't, I'll be honest with you, we couldn't do this without the partnerships that we have with the DEA, with the Attorney General's office. It takes a lot of people, a lot of resources in order to dismantle these organizations, and it's been a tremendous effort. And the detectives, I can't tell you how the countless hours they put into this case. So
So you say that you've dismantled the organization, and yet it's not going to have much of an impact on the drug distribution network here in the valley?
well, I would say it impacted a lot of people because we took off 485 pounds. If you look at the numbers, so you directly impact those people, and you've directly impacted a lot. Several organizations out of this have been dismantled. So did it impact the valley? Absolutely. Will more folks from Mexico be sent up to try to get things started at another level? I'm sure that they will, and we'll be ready to take them off as well.
I'm sorry if I missed this. Can you say which cartels some of these individuals were connected to?
Primary Sinaloan cartel is what we experience here in Arizona.
Was the drug coming from Mexico or it was produced here in the valley?
I'm sorry, one more time?
The drugs were they coming from Mexico or they were
Correct.
produced here in the valley?
No, they're coming from Mexico. These are Phoenix-based drug trafficking organizations that basically do the distribution, and then Mexico will send up the drugs to them to distribute. And so we're focused on the drug trafficking organizations here. On a larger scale, the DEA focuses internationally on the drug traffickers.
How significant is Phoenix, the Valley, Arizona, in the bigger picture of this trafficking? I mean, it's almost as if we're a highway of sorts, it's rolling about.
That's absolutely correct. Just about every border state is having the impact. We are ground zero for a lot of the drugs that come in. And so when they come across the border, they start, distributing, across the nation. This is their base to get started from. So when they make that border jump, then they kind of start organizing, and then they will sell locally, they'll ship nationally. And but this is definitely ground zero for drugs, just as is California's border, Texas, New Mexico, and we all are experiencing, the drugs coming out of Mexico.
Given the expanse of assault, is it, I mean, is it possible to say we will end this, or are we always just going to be curtailing?
You know, and I think about that sometimes, but, I mean, is it possible to end aggravated assault? Is it possible to end murder? Is it possible to end all these crimes? They've been around since the beginning of man, and, you know, we can't necessarily eradicate aggravated assault or sexual assault, but we can sure make an impact for some victims out there, and we can surely make an impact here for a lot of victims, and, you know, we just can't give up the fight. So you've got to continue to fight and take these people off the street, take their dope off the street, because, you know, it just takes one person who runs around hopped up on meth to go out there and really wreak havoc in a family's life. And so did we impact Arizona? Absolutely. And we impacted a lot of individuals, probably a lot of people that don't even realize it, but, you know, they've been saved a lot of heartache.
What do you think it's going to take for these cartels to think twice about coming back to Phoenix?
Oh, I think they think twice every day. They're constantly changing their game plan. They're constantly evolving and trying to figure out how to get around law enforcement. So it's a game of cat and mouse. But you know, fortunately for us, we've got the resources and dedicated professionals that go out there and you know, put it to them. And so, you know, are we going to win the battle? I think that it's going to be a battle that's going to wage for a long time. But it's going to have to be, you know, there's some international laws that need to take place. There's extra efforts internationally that need to take place. But locally, we've got to keep up the good fight.
And as organized as they are, they really do want the easiest way possible to get this stuff around. They don't like to have this confrontation.
It's all about the money. It's a business to them. And they'll flood the border with as much dope as possible. They know that they're going to get, some of it's going to get through, some of it won't. And that's the cost for them of doing business. The havoc that it wreaks after it gets here, they don't care.
How many agents participated in this operation?
I don't want to get into the specifics, you know, of the investigative strategies, nor exactly the specifics of how many agents we've got involved. And that's, you know, I want to keep some of our, hold our cards a little bit closer so that we can continue to fight the fight.
What we'll do now, guys, is we'll go ahead and end this. And if you have any other individual questions, you can come up to us after. Thank you very much for coming out. And if you have any other questions, I'll be around here to help do some interviews in Spanish as well. Thank you.